Hey everybody, welcome to episode 18 of the Cash Flow Joe podcast, presented by Pip's Path. I'm Pip Stellick, joined by my business partners, Steve Hipple, Bradley Strack, and Sam Musa. Steve, how you doing today?
Hey, Pipper.
That's awesome. Bradley, how are you, my friend?
I'm up and at 'em.
That's right. And Sam, how are you doing today?
Always.
Yeah, exactly. We are here to help beginning investors with their first transaction and even experienced investors, showing them how to make more money so that they can do more property deals with less of their own money, so more leverage and in a safer way. Our company trains and mentors thousands of students all over the world to become real estate investors. For more information, visit our website at pipspath.com, where we have tons of resources for you to get started now, including your personal scorecard. And what we want you to do is fill that out so you can have a one-on-one consultation with us about where you need to go, what you need to do, and what you can do to get started right now. Today we're going to be talking about a concept called lease option or rent to own. This will take multiple episodes. It's not going to be done in one episode. It is probably, for many of us on this podcast, one of our favorite strategies. And the reason we love it, it really comes down to logically, it works in any market. And so that's a good thing. It works in an up market, a down market, and a sideways market. So that's the logic behind it. The cool part about it is you can do it with none of your own money, none of your own credit. And for me, the reason I like it so much, and many of you will like it as well, is you can help people along the way. What better thing to think about than to be able to help people and at the exact same time make money? If you listened to or watched our last podcast, we were talking about finding one family who you could help get into a property that they couldn't get into it without you. And so if there is a concept out there that is able to help somebody and we don't need to use our own money and our own credit, we can help as many people as we want. So there's a lot going on with lease options. We're going to be talking about it in a very basic concept this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever you're listening to this. And it's morning for us right now, so that's why I had to say that. And so what we want to do is focus on how do we find potential buyers. So I'm going to start off with Steve on that. Steve, what are some ways that we can find potential? We call them tenant buyers, a tenant who has the option to buy the property in the future on a rent-to-own process. How can we find tenant buyers, Steve?
Hey, Pip, there's lots of ways to find tenant buyers, and there's certain criteria why people can't become homeowners. Or let's talk about some of the main reasons that people do not qualify for mortgages. And I guess the big reason people don't qualify for a mortgage is money. They don't have the down payment money they need. They haven't saved they need 3.5%, they need 5%. Sometimes they need more than that, depending on their situation. So they haven't been able to save that kind of money. So what we can do is we can help these people save that money, because what we're looking for is people, families, individuals who have steady income. They've got good, stable employment, and they've saved a bit of money. They want to be homeowners, but the bank has turned them down. And one of the reasons is because they haven't saved that money. So through Lease Option, our Lease Option program, we can help them accumulate the down payment money they need, whether 3.5%, 5%, 7, 8, 9%, whatever they need. And we get that number from the mortgage brokers. Like, I'm not qualified to say, hey, Sam, you're self-employed, you're going to need 5% down payment or 10% down payment in 3 years. So we would work with a mortgage broker to find out in advance how much this person needs. So if Sam needs 8% down payment, we can help him structure his monthly rent. And what we'll do, we'll have him pay a bit more in the monthly rent each month and do a guaranteed savings program. So he would just pay a bit more month to month to month. We'd accumulate that money. So at the end of the 2-year or 3-year lease option deal, he's got the money he needs saved up, ready to go. So at that, he's got all the money he needs to buy that home in the near future. So the first one is money, the reason people can't quite qualify for a mortgage. Second big reason some people don't qualify to buy a property now is credit. Credit's a big one. So a lot of times people want to buy a home. Maybe they've saved the money. Maybe they're close to saving the money, but credit is the other challenge they have. Maybe they had a blip in the past, or they had a bankruptcy, or reduced at work or downsized at work, and they missed some payments. Their credit score got beat up. There's lots of good, hardworking people, good, hardworking families out there, and their credit's not good. So they go to apply for a mortgage. One of the homeowners, the bank says, no, you got to fix your credit. Now, if people can fix their credit, we can actually help them repair their credit. They can fix their credit in 1, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it needs. The sooner they get on it, the faster they get on fixing their credit. So we can actually help them repair their credit too. So that's very important, very big way we can help people become homeowners. So they're saving down payment. We can help them save the down payment. We can help them repair their credit. So those are kind of two big ways. But there's also other reasons people don't qualify to become homeowners. So a lot of times, there's a big market of people self-employed. And self-employed is a huge market. Self-employed, all kinds of jobs out there, good, hardworking individuals. They start their own business. They work for themselves, but they do their own. Well, I guess they're in control of their own taxes. And with self-employed people, we all know what something they can do is expenses. They can do some expenses. It'd be like Kramer on Seinfeld. Pip loves to reference Kramer where you just write it off. You write it off. Well, sometimes with self-employed people, they write off maybe a little too much. What's that, Pip?
Giddy up.
Giddy up, right? We all know Kramer. But sometimes self-employed people, it's not that they make good money. A lot of times they make good money, but they just don't show they make good money because sometimes they expense too many things because they want to pay less tax. So a self-employed person, if they make a good income, we can put them in contact with a mortgage broker, get some advice. What do they do for the next 1, 2, 3 years? But what they're probably gonna have to do for the next 1, 2, 3 years is declare a bit more income and pay a bit more taxes for 1, 2, 3 years, get approved for that mortgage. And then once they get approved for that mortgage to get in the home they want to do, the home of their choice, then they can go back to doing the taxes however they want to do, maybe the traditional way to pay a bit less in taxes. That's up to them. But we can actually give them some tax advice, or a mortgage broker can help them accumulate, I guess, the credit and the mortgage ability they need in advance. So far we've covered 3 of the 4 top reasons people don't qualify. We've covered money, covered credit, covered self-employed. And then the next, Brian, I guess the other one I want to talk about right here this morning, the other big group of people is new immigrants, people who've just moved to the country. And why are they such a big, a big pool of people who are great for lease options is because when they come to this country, they don't have bad credit. They actually have no credit. They're starting over. A lot of times people come here, they've got money saved up. They've got money in their pockets, but they don't have any credit because they're brand new here. And if you think having bad credit is a challenge to fix that, try having no credit. It actually takes much longer to start with no credit and build that up. So we've got people want to live here, they want to be citizens, they want to get jobs, they want to build a life here, and they want to be homeowners. And such a big pool of people, new immigrants, we can help become homeowners because once they get here, obviously they need an income, they need a job to pay the rent and qualify for our program. But we can help them become homeowners in 1, 2, or 3 years after that. So the big 4 reasons are lack of money, lack of credit score, sometimes self-employed people with tax challenges, and also then new immigrants. And I'll tell you, we've taught lease options for many, many, many years, and all across the country, coast to coast. And a lot of times we see people, especially in the last couple of years, and they say, "Well, Steve, the market's real hot. The market's real hot, and there's no deals here." And we quite often say, "Well, stop looking for deals and start looking for people to help." When you start looking for people to help, so if you start targeting looking for people with money challenges or credit challenges, self-employed people, new immigrants, that's a whole pool. That's a big pool of people, right? You can help them find a home, they can become lease options, your tenant buyers, and you can get a good cash flowing deal with one of the best tenants you'll ever have. Because with lease option, we always say your tenants or your tenant buyers, because they're a tenant renting, but they want to actually buy the place from you in 1, 2, or 3 years. We call them tenant buyers, and they're one of the best tenants you'll ever have because they've got the homeowner's mentality. They want to buy that home from you in the near future, so they're going to take care of that home. They'll be the best tenants. I've had many, many tenant buyers, and I've had some fantastic ones, and we'll probably talk about that a bit later on, why tenant buyers are so fantastic versus traditional renters. Anybody listening, you've had a traditional renter, sometimes the traditional ones don't improve your property. Sometimes they actually make it go the other. Sometimes they can beat up your property a little bit. No, they don't all, but some can. Some people listening who've had tenants, and we all have stories of some maybe tenants who didn't improve your property, but quite often tenant buyers can improve your property. We'll talk about that a bit later on, I'm sure. But we've taught this in many, many cities, states, coast to coast, and when the market was hot the past few years, people say, well, there's no deals here. And when you're trying to help people get into property, you're trying to help, somebody with money challenges, credit challenges, do you think there's always people in any market, whether the market's up, down, sideways, whether the market's super hot or a buyer's market, seller's market, Do you think there's always people have money challenges? What do you guys think? Yes or no? Always people money challenges?
Of course.
Yeah, I think so. Do you think in any market, no matter how hot the market is, do you think there's always people with credit challenges? Yes or no?
Definitely.
Yeah. And do you think in any market, no matter what the market's doing, is there always self-employed people?
I think so.
Sam's just down there smiling, so I'm going to take his smile as a nod of approval. And the last question, you guys see the pattern here. No matter what the market is doing, do you guys think there's always people who will be new to the country? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
got some input
there
from
will
Sam
be.
on that one. So
Sam's
fantastic,
trying to be
guys.
a new immigrant in the U.S. if he could too. So
That's right. That's right. Well, we
He's
spend a
hoping
lot
for
of
that.
time here. We like it here. We
do.
Yeah. So you're starting to see when you start looking for people with real estate problems, how can I help somebody solve a real estate problem, and start networking with mortgage brokers, realtors, other investors, and just targeting. I want to find people who want to become homeowners but don't quite qualify. There's lots of people out there, and we can add to that list. We talked about money, we talked about credit, we talked about self-employed people, we talked about new immigrants. Well, what about people who are just divorced? They don't qualify for a mortgage. The banks find them as risky, right? Unless they got a big old down payment, but a lot of people don't have that. So people who've been divorced, downsized, sick, lots of people out there who had a blip in their credit and they're working on getting that fixed. They're back to work and they're able to be good tenant buyers for your program. So there's lots of good people out there.
That's awesome, and 1,000,000% correct. How you can find tenant buyers. That's the actual easier part of this process. And why would a tenant buyer like to do this? And what is the safety for us? We're going to get to that in a minute. But I want you to think about when you're buying a property and when you're helping a person. What we want to be able to do is make sure that we're finding a solution. Sam talks about win-win scenarios. We want them to be able to feel like they're getting what they need to out of it, but we need to feel like we're getting what we need to out of it. So Bradley, talk a little bit about the protections that we have, kind of how the tenant buyer does some stuff that a traditional renter wouldn't do.
Well, let's set the scene a little bit here with an example. I think it'll help to kind of explain why a tenant buyer will do some of the things that are protections for us. And so we have Dick and Jane who are looking for a first-time home, right? So we've got Dick and Jane. They're looking for a first-time home. They call up a local realtor to show them some properties. They know the price range, the area they want to be in. They know how many bedrooms they want, all that. So they go out, they check out properties, they find one that they loved. So Dick and Jane tell the realtor, hey, we want to get this property. We want to make an offer. The realtor
Can we
says,
have the realtor be called Tom?
Tom?
Can we call him Tom?
Tom is a great realtor from Nebraska City, Nebraska, if you're ever looking. But anyway, so we've got Dick and Jane with their realtor, Tom. They find the property they want. They want their American dream of home ownership, so they're going to make an offer. Tom looks at them and says, okay, do you have a pre-approval for a mortgage to buy this house? Dick and Jane look at Tom and they say, a what? And it's not their fault, because many first-time home buyers don't realize that you need a pre-approval or have to go through that process before you get your first home. But this is what realtors face all the time. So Tom, the realtor, says, no problem. I've got this great mortgage broker. Okay, this great mortgage broker, Christine. And so Christine is this great mortgage broker, and Dick and Jane go meet with Christine to get pre-approved for the house of their dreams. And unfortunately, after Christine looks at their credit, maybe it was credit issues, money issues, like Steve said, maybe they're self-employed, they're not showing enough on their taxes, whatever the reason, maybe it's a combination of these reasons, but they can't quite qualify. So at this point, Tom, the realtor, has shown properties, spent time with these guys. He's not going to get paid because the deal doesn't close. The mortgage broker has gone through Dick and Jane's financials, run all the numbers, spent a bunch of time, but they can't quite qualify for the mortgage. So if the mortgage doesn't close, they don't get the property. He's not going to get his commission. And of course, last but not least, Dick and Jane now, they're stuck as renters because they can't get into home ownership right this minute. Now, we tell our students, and we've already been talking a lot about networking and power team, and we always say the first people you should be getting on your power team, the first people you should be talking to is actually mortgage brokers. And the reason why we say that is because we want this next phone call to be from that mortgage broker, Christine, because we had introduced to her our lease option or rent to own program where we can help her close more deals, where we'll come in and buy Dick and Jane's house, let them move in now, and they can rent it from us until they're able to qualify. So this is why it's so important to start building that network. Is we want to be able to have mortgage brokers who are looking for these potential leads for us. And this is where that shift from the left side of the quadrant to the right side comes in using other people's time and other people's energy. We have mortgage brokers, and the more you talk to, the more you have working for you on a full-time basis, because we're only asking for the business they can't close. So the mortgage broker, Christine, gives Dick and Jane my phone number. They call me up. They say they've heard that I could help them with home ownership. And so I'm going to tell them exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, guys, I can buy the property that you're looking at right now. You can rent it from me with the option to purchase in the future. So the good thing is now Dick and Jane can get into the house they want today. Now, as far as why is this great for us as the investor? Well, when we have a tenant buyer, the tenant buyer is actually going to pay 10 to 40% more than what the fair market rent is in that area. And so let me give you some quick math on that.
Did you say 10 to 40%?
I did.
Right now, some listeners saying, wait, rewind that. So they pay 10% to 40% more than fair market rent.
That's exactly right.
I agree. I just want to simmer on those numbers for a bit, because right now there's people saying, did he just say that?
Well, and we've got to think about the scenario, right? Why would somebody pay 10 to 40% more? We're talking if the fair market rent in the area is $2,000, our tenant buyers are going to pay $2,200 to $2,800 per month. And people are going, well, that sounds pretty crazy. And you're exactly right, Steve. 10 to 40% is significant. But at this point, what other option do our tenant buyers have? They've already been told that they do not qualify for a loan. So if they want to continue renting, they're going to build zero equity. They're out $2,000 a month down the drain. With our program, they're able to get into the house they want now. They're going to pay a little bit of a premium for that, but they can start making it their home now, even while they're renting it. If they want to upgrade, if they want to paint it, if they want to put in new floors, now we're going to approve any of these upgrades, but I'm sure we'll talk about many of the upgrades that Steve and Pip have had tenant buyers put in their properties as we go through this. But they'll pay 10 to 40% more, because we can also use that for some of those issues that they may have had prior. So if they've got money issues, we can use this 10 to 40% more than fair market rent to save a little bit extra and give it back to them to help credit them at the end of the deal for their down payment. So we can charge them a little bit more. So for us as an investor, that means that our income goes up, which is a good thing. So then the other side of this is our tenant buyers are also going to be responsible for all the maintenance and repairs on the property. And this is because, again, they have the homeowner's mindset. You heard Steve say this. They're not in there thinking, hey, I'm going to be here for 12 months. Let's use and abuse this place for as much as we can and then move on. They plan on this being their forever home. So they are going to treat it, frankly, better than many landlords would treat their own properties, because it's their home. And they're going to be responsible for it, because that's what their home ownership goal is. So for us as the investor, this also now decreases our expenses on the property. And this is why we love lease options so much. Just doing traditional type rental properties, you end up dealing with those weekend toilet issues, those late night tenant calls, chasing rent, that sort of thing, because the people you have in your property have that tenant mindset. We love lease options so much because the people in our home have the ownership mentality. They're going to be taking care of that property. They've got skin in the game. They're paying a little bit more than premium rent because they are getting an opportunity that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And what's cool about this is, even being from a coastal town like I am in Delray Beach, where we hear something called the 1% rule. So out in investing, we hear a lot about this thing called the 1% rule. And 1% rule is kind of like a general rule of thumb on the rent on a property should roughly be 1% of what the value of that property is on a monthly basis. And why we use the 1% rule as a good rule of thumb is that generally means, it's early, it generally means that the property should cash flow as a rental, and what we're always looking for is that cash flow. So, unfortunately, in a coastal area, your California, your Florida, any of the coast up the side there, really the whole way north to south, it's hard to find the 1% rule or find cash flow because property values are so high compared to what market rents are. In a lease option situation, however, because we're actually increasing the income by charging 10 to 40% more in rent, and decreasing our expenses by having the tenant buyer take care of all the maintenance and repairs, now we don't have to go and necessarily look for those 1% rule markets. You can use this lease option strategy really in any city. I mean, even the most expensive cities. We've had students doing lease options on seven-figure properties because that's the type of property that's in that area. So it's a very, very safe, and coming from the guy who likes to be pretty conservative in his investing, we love lease options because it's actually a very safe investment for us as the investor.
I want to reiterate that 1% rule because it's hard to understand, and many of you that are just listening to this, it's hard to do that. And so just imagine for just a moment that the rent on a property is $2,000 a month, and that is 1% of what? 2% or $2,000. That's 1% of $200,000. So if your monthly rent is $2,000 a month, the most that you would want to pay for a house is $200,000. So that's the 1% rule. Whatever your monthly rental income is, now you could add in any other income you might have from a garage or laundry or something like that, but the 1% rule is truly based on what your monthly income is, and that is 1% of whatever your total purchase price should be. Now, I know some of you guys, and Bradley even said this, you're going to say, well, that doesn't work around here, and we get that, and that's why we like lease options, because the tenant buyer is taking care of the maintenance and repairs. So we don't have to worry about that. So that 1% rule is irrelevant. On top of that, the tenant buyer is paying a premium rent. Even though we might credit it to them towards their purchase price, on a month-to-month basis, our cash flow is going up. So our monthly operating expenses, we like to call that MO, our monthly operating expenses are actually going down in a lease option, but our monthly income is going up. What's the international sound of money?
Cha-ching. Cha-ching.
That's right. And since it's
Sam's down there still smiling, but he's nodding agreeing.
Sam's asleep.
He's agreed.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to think that you can actually do any property, any market, any area with a lease option, and that is so true. I've got students that are doing lease options on multi-million-dollar properties in Vancouver. And I know that's hard to imagine, but actually those areas, those markets are ripe for this kind of stuff. Why? Because people can't afford to get into them in a specifically traditional way. And so when the fact that the market has been really hot in many areas lately, so prices have gone up, that gives us a big reason to get into lease options. The fact that interest rates on mortgages have gone up. And if those interest rates have gone up, guess what? It's harder for people to qualify on a monthly basis. So what happens is this is a perfect storm of problems. And we don't even have to, try to falsely find problems. They're there every day. And we say this all the time, the bigger the problem, the bigger the profit. And so if we can truly help people, with their problems, we're going to get paid. And the bigger the problem, the more we're going to get paid at the end of the day. Numbers got to work, but that is so important for us. And Sam, obviously, Bradley talked a lot about why, it's a benefit to us. Why is it such a benefit to a tenant buyer to be able to do a lease option?
So, excuse me.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. The tenant buyer comes into a contract with the option, but not the obligation to purchase the property. So the option contract that's signed with the seller
Sam looks like he was trying to hide his face this morning.
He's like one of those guys that's trying to be anonymous on the news.
I think it's a good look for him.
I don't think I'm hiding anything.
I think he could probably pull the hat down even
These are
further.
not sunglasses here. These are just glasses. They look like sunglasses with the lighting. But anyways, so the option contract gives the purchaser the right but not the obligation to purchase the property, which gives the tenant buyer the opportunity to be in the home. And really primarily there's two problems that you deal with when it comes to real estate, whether you're a buyer or a seller or even an investor. Anybody involved in real estate really is time and or money, right? And it could be both. So the primary problem for the tenant buyer, the one who wants to purchase the property, is time. They have a time problem. At the current time, they can't qualify for a mortgage for whatever the reasons, many of the reasons that Steve talked about. That's what we're helping them with. So we're giving them time to resolve that credit problem, that self-employed problem, that immigrant problem with no history of credit. That's what we're offering them. And this is the option contract allows the tenant buyer to have that time and have the right but not the obligation to purchase the property, which is great for the tenant buyer because the tenant buyer now is actually not taking risk. They're not taking the risk of the market shifting because ultimately if the market shifts and the property value goes down, the tenant buyer is not required to purchase the property. Now, of course, they have to give up their non-refundable option consideration, which we're going to talk more about in the next couple sessions. But the ability for someone to get into the neighborhood that they want, and many people move, I know I did, based on a school district. I wanted the best school district for my son. I want to live in this neighborhood. I want my son to go to this particular school, and I'd love to be an owner. But if I'm in a situation where I can't be an owner, I'm still going to go into that neighborhood and rent. Now, if I'm given the option to be able to be a homeowner, a purchaser, because my son's going to be going to that school for a long time, in high school, I want him to stay in the same district. This gives me the opportunity and a solution to deal with my time problem. Gives me time to resolve whatever issue it is that's prohibiting me from purchasing the property. And I have the right to walk away from the deal. So it's a great option for the purchaser. They're taking minimal risk. The cost of that is nominal, right? I'm paying a little bit more in market rent. That's okay. But I have an ultimate plan over the next 1 to 3 years to be a homeowner. And this is what I want. I want to be a homeowner. I want to be able to part of the community, be a homeowner, and live where I want to live, when, now. So a great opportunity for people who want to be homeowners who have this particular challenge.
Yeah, and Steve likes to call these people homeowners in training. And that's a great way to look at it. They're close to qualifying, but they're not quite there, and we need to set them up for success. A lot of times people think, oh, you shouldn't charge them as much rent, or you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Well, if you're not charging them enough rent that it's going to be the same as a home ownership, they're in for a rude awakening when they go to own the property 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, and they're not able to make that monthly payment because you haven't conditioned them into doing so.
Yeah, and there's a real risk that the seller is taking on, right? When you enter into an option contract, a lease option, a rent to own, you can't sell that house to anybody else, right? The tenant buyer controls that property for the duration of the contract. So for me as the seller, to the tenant buyer, I am taking a risk, and I should be rewarded for that risk, right? And that's where that extra little bit of income that I get and the increase that we're going to talk about of the property value, that's why I'm getting that extra money. I'm taking on that risk. So everybody takes some risks, and everybody gets a benefit from that risk. For the seller, it's I make a little bit of extra money on the property with that cash flow, and ultimately make a little bit more on the sale of the property. The tenant buyer, what their risk is, they're putting up the non-refundable, they're paying a little bit extra, but they also have the right to walk away from the property if that property shifts or things change for them. So everybody's taking a little bit of risk, everybody's being paid for that risk, but ultimately, as you were talking about, it's a plan for home ownership. We're creating a success plan for them. And if they're not paying enough in that monthly fee, in that monthly rent, they're not prepared actually for home ownership because of the additional costs, the cost of ownership. There's a real cost of being a homeowner.
No, definitely. And this is why this is not a one session topic. There's so much going on. And so on our next podcast, what we're going to talk about is, and we'll bring it right back in, and we'll set the table with Dick and Jane again and the whole process. But we're going to talk about, the extra that they'll pay and that risk and why we do all those kinds of things. What if the market goes up? What if the market goes down? What if the market stays sideways? We're going to get into all those details. We're going to get into it down the road as far as how do we even fund this deal? If we are the investor, how do we fund it? And it becomes a bit of a puzzle, but if you're able to put together the puzzle, you're going to get paid. And if I was teaching a class right now, I would say turn to the person beside you and say, I want to get paid.
I want to get
paid.
We all want to get paid.
We all just want to get paid.
And that's what you want to do as an investor. Everybody wants to get paid.
Cha-ching.
So we're going to talk about this on our next episode. I want to say again before we get out of here today, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use. For more information, go to our website, pipspat.com. Follow us on social media. That's Pipspat the Property and Cashflow Joe Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Leave us a comment, give us a follow, and we will see y'all on the path.